So there's an interesting article here, Jacobin. Washington Carpenters. It's up to the membership to win the strike. Interesting dynamics in this strike here. Basically, you have workers who are building mansions, among other things, for billionaires and millionaires in the Seattle area, told that they aren't allowed to, for instance, strike certain projects, for instance, Microsoft. It's really a membership versus leadership thing, which is, kind of, maybe I'm going too far out on this, but it reminds me of what's going on with the progressives in the Democratic Party and the leadership saying no. But anyway, David, take it away.
No, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, for folks who haven't seen or aren't in the area, this is a very large and historic strike. The union, I think, represents somewhere around 11,000 workers who have voted down now multiple agreements presented to them from the union leadership. So this has sort of been going on for a while, and fundamental to the demands of workers are things like, obviously, stuff you would expect, like higher pay, but it's things like parking. As more and more people are sort of thrown out of the cities and the communities that they're working in because they can't afford to live there, people have to drive in, and in those places you have to pay for parking, which can really start to eat in to your yearly income. I mean, these are kind of basic bread and butter demands, along with, things like better protections, better working hours, et cetera. Right. So this is one of those moments where, people are finally feeling the confidence to stand up, after seeing the union negotiate contracts that the workers, basically the rank and file workers, have found to be lacking. There's some interesting dynamics here. And I mean, maybe first and foremost, though, let's just say, complete solidarity with everybody. The pictures and the videos we've been seeing from the picket lines have been quite inspiring. Not only, union members directly picketing, but also have been met with members of the community, members of other unions, and certainly socialists, including people like Shama Sawant and the Socialist Alternative out there. And we'll get into that maybe in a moment. Because there's some controversy around that. But yeah, I mean, basically, there's rank and file tensions between, the union members and union leadership. First and foremost, it started because these workers in the union have had contracts negotiated for them that have no strike agreements. Meaning that certain people will continue to go to work even if their union, goes on strike. And we're seeing that right now, where not everybody who is in the union has been on the picket line. Some people have been going to work because they have these no strike clauses in their contracts, which I think sort of shows some of the difficult decline in labor power in this country, that something like that has developed in the first place. I mean, the first and foremost power the working class has is the ability to withhold their labor, and basically negotiating away that power in a union contract, sort of defeats a lot of the purposes. I understand, the conditions that oftentimes have been really dire and difficult. But right now what we're seeing is workers pushing back against that concept, particularly the no strike contracts in general, but also orders and from union leadership as to what sites they could have picket lines on. And if you pull up that piece, which has, and we'll get into the organization here in a moment, I want you to go down to the bit where they have to explain how they had a fight at a meeting, so that they could go and pick it outside of Microsoft.
I think this is it here, yeah. After the rally, there was this crazy screaming match between mainly the Microsoft guys and the leadership. The rally started off. This is, I should say, after the Microsoft was left off of...
yes. So the strike has been authorized at this point, and now they're basically, people are getting information about where they can do picket lines, et cetera. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and so now this is to add Microsoft to the thing. The rally started off kind of like a pep rally, but when it came down to it, a brother from the Microsoft job began pushing for the leadership to allow us to picket the Microsoft job. Other brothers joined us in and got behind him to push for the Microsoft job, which became kind of a shouting match, and it looked like it was going to get ugly. I think something was thrown. The argument ended with the Carpenters Council head, Evelyn Shapiro, conceding that the Microsoft job would be added as a fifth job to the picket list, but it was only after the members really demanded it, and it looked like there was almost a physical fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so basically what we're seeing is a lot more militancy from rank and file and some hesitancy from union leadership.
And I just want to add to like the, not even hesitancy, but like kind of gamesmanship where Art describes that, the leadership will allow you to pick at certain smaller jobs, basically to like let off steam, because they, like he says, like, what's going to be the effect of this? And he says, ultimately it's going to diminish the effect of the morale. Everyone knows you need to protest the big jobs. Mm-hmm. Otherwise otherwise it's literally just a waste of energy.
Yeah. I mean, because the whole point of this is like, because if you're not creating economic pain, right, to the bosses and to the people,
it's not about being heard.
Who are negotiating the contract is if you're not giving economic pain to the people, to like the bosses, you're going to just be suffering the economic pain yourself, right? Because if you're not going into work and you're sort of losing that money, right, it just means that the workers themselves are the ones who are getting hit. Now, just to be clear about this, the union says is that the reason that they can't do this is because they are afraid of lawsuits, something that many of the rank and file members have sort of rejected. I will just note anecdotally and historically, the state of law in the United States when it comes to labor rights is ridiculous and it is horrendous. But I will also say, and I'm not saying these things lightly, because going on strike, taking these conflicts, that is dangerous for yourself and for your family. You can lose your income. You can be, ostracized. Like these are not things that we're taking lightly here. Right. But it should be known that unions were illegal. All of these things were illegal at one point or another, right? And it was the fact that people were getting together and were refusing to concede these fundamental rights that we were able to enshrine them in law in the first place. And we might have to get to a place where that happens again. But anyway, I wanted to, if you could go down in that article again, Matt, to the section, what do you see as the union leadership's motivation for this strategy? And just to be clear, I don't know if you said before, this is an interview in Jacobin with one of the rank and file members who is a member of the Peter J. McGuire group, and we'll put up some of their demands in a moment. But this is the big claim here, and why there's so much tension. What do you see as the union leadership's motivation for the strategy? The union leadership has taken on this market share philosophy over the years and has basically come to see itself as a labor broker, not as a union. A labor broker is a company that takes labor and sells it. Our union has become a sophisticated version of that, taking in carpenters and selling them off to the contractors, because its perspective on what a union is has changed. Because it's selling us to the contractors, it doesn't want to sell us for too high of a rate. It has begun to see itself as a partner of the contractors instead of having opposing interests. Mm. The union has fought for years to keep our wages rising at a very meager rate instead of really fighting. It has also tried this whole summer to dampen the militancy of the membership. So if I'm going to pull this up now. So that is coming from a member there. And again, there are factions and there are fights and conflicts within all of the membership. But I think it's really important to get these views out there, because I'll tell you what, corporate media specifically, and I mean this like in the most literal sense ever, business press in the Seattle, Washington area has just been lying off their ass about the demands of the workers and all this kind of stuff, and doing a hell of a lot of red baiting and things of that nature, saying basically, these things have been infiltrated by Reds, etc. And I think that really needs to be pushed back against. And I'm going to share this right here with y'all. Which is the set of demands from the Peter J. McGuire group, which is a faction within the union there in Washington. Let me just read these demands for y'all. Brothers and sisters, rank and file carpenters of this union are currently sacrificing our livelihoods in order to participate in this strike. We need a quick and decisive victory so that we may return to work as soon as possible with a strong contract in hand. But here are what they're calling for. the picketing of strikeable projects with the highest possible economic impact to the AGC in descending order. The picketing of as many projects as possible, given the available numbers of pickets, with no more than one captain and 5 pickets per gate unless exceptional circumstances require more. A list of strikeable projects which may be picketed to be released to the membership immediately. The immediate training of rank and file and job steward picket captains. The relocation of most pickets from projects which have been successfully shut down to other nearby active projects. And here's where we get some big ones. Picketing to continue unceasingly without break days for the contractors. That's critical to create that economic punishment for them. 7, no further deals with AGC signatory contractors that deny carpenters their right to strike. So that's a demand right there to end these no strike clauses and contracts. And 8, all current sweetheart agreements with no strike clauses to be ratified by the membership via secret ballot as per section 39A of the council's bylaws. We urge you to join with us in making the strike successful. So those are very clear demands. Obviously, they go along with the demands for a better contract. But we are seeing the strikes there are. The strikes in Washington, this has been going on for weeks now, is another really, it's a horrible moment in the sense of, what people are having to go through and what they had to go through to get here. But it's very encouraging to see an increase in this kind of labor militancy, not just in Washington, but all around the country. And if we're going to win in the long run, we need to be thinking about these fundamental structures and the ways that we've been organizing in the past, in order to make sure that working people all across this country and all around the world get the rights, dignity, and pay that they deserve.
Yeah. The technocratic structures are not going to work basically anywhere. And the only time this country really ever worked was when it was forced to by radicalism and just demand, right? And not, let's all work in a partnership with the people that are fleecing us.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And we also can't, ignore also the Shama Sawant and the socialist alternative aspect to this story too. So I don't know how familiar you are with this, but from the get-go, as you would expect, Shama Sawant and socialist alternative in Seattle in particular, that's a group that shows up. People can disagree with tactics and lines and things like that, but that's just a group that certainly shows up. Mm-hmm. Shama Sawant, in fact, has, pledged to donate $10,000 from their solidarity fund to a strike fund if it is to be set up, which is a whole other can of worms. But as all of this has been happening, Shama Sawant has been attacked by members of the business press and also by some members of union leadership, saying that she is just agitating, using this as a photo op, using this to further her own political career, and trying to encourage people to basically, be more militant, to risk themselves getting sued, et cetera, et cetera. And, I think that these things just have to be called out as categorically false and incorrect. While, not everybody, I think, in those unions is necessarily a member of the socialist alternatives or even a fan of Shama Sawant, she has been welcome there and encouraged to be there, just like anybody else.
Done.
And, including having, letters of support from rank and file membership in support of her being there. I just think that those kind of accusations are just complete bogus. And you also need to remember, if you're just sort of zooming in and out of this story, right, that there is this fundamental conflict here, right? One between, workers and bosses, right? Between the workers and the contractors. But also there's tensions within the union itself, right? So everybody's trying to find ways to score points against one another. So we'll certainly be, keeping tabs on that, unless you had anything else you wanted to.
I think just one note to say is Art, the Carpenter interviewed, does say that the leadership is responding to some of their, the demand they're basically laying down. So just to note that it's not, they're not hitting a brick wall here, even though it's nearly.
Yeah, but they're definitely, but at the same time, as the quote and the headline of the article goes, it's up to the membership to win this strike.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that kind of shift is thinking about things bottom up.
Well, and I just think it's
That's
ridiculous.
just fundamental to a lot of left-wing socialist politics and the kind of developments that we need to be seeing in general.
That's why, to me, the Sawant thing seems ridiculous. Like, I mean, I wish we had more politicians that, you know, take time out of their day to show solidarity with 2,000 striking carpenters, like as a photo op. I mean, that's such a ridiculous. I mean, it's an easy thing to say, really.
Yeah, and you can read it in the Seattle Business Journal.
Right, exactly.
Something that leftists and other folks should not be parroting.
God.